Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the Happy Parent, Happy Child Summit. This morning, we talked to Dr. Hilarie Cash, and she is been around with tech addiction for 30 years, over 30 years. She's just super loving and maternal and supportive because we are no blame, no shame in talking about the tech addiction that is facing most families today. Addiction is such a bad, loaded word. And the importance for us as parents is to get really comfortable in identifying that this is happening in our homes with our children. Usually we think of addiction as something for adults to deal with. We have this in our homes with our children and perhaps even with you or your partner as well. So my offering with all of this is that we get just really bold and comfortable with identifying that there's a problem, and the only way to solve that problem is to meet it face to face and have the tools and the resources to do that. So let's jump into this conversation with Dr. Hilarie Cash, and we really get to the meat of this and start to have the courage to stay in the conversation and make some changes. I'll see you on the inside. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we have the pleasure of connecting with the lovely Dr. Hilarie Cash. She is a true pioneer in the field of digital addiction. And as the co-founder and chief clinical officer of Restart Life, she holds the first residential program in the US or Canada dedicated to addressing internet and video game addiction. Dr. Cash has been at the forefront of understanding and treating the complexities of screen dependence since the mid-90s, y'all. Beyond her clinical work, she is an accomplished author, having co-authored Video Games and Your Kids, How Parents Stay in Control, and contributed to numerous peer-reviewed articles and workbooks on the subject. She really has extensive experience and knowledge, which she helps to train parents and therapists and researchers and educators. She's been doing that for decades, solidifying her reputation as one of the nation's leading experts in internet and gaming disorders. And we have her here today. What truly sets Dr. Hilarie apart is her warm and endearing presence. She is just such a light. And speaking with her feels like reconnecting with a deeply loved relative, be it a cherished aunt or a nurturing grandmother. Her compassionate approach not only enlightens, but also comforts, making complex and emotional topics accessible and so doable. So join us as we delve into the evolving landscape of digital addiction, explore effective strategies for fostering balanced technology use, and we'll gain invaluable insights from Dr. Hilarie Cash's wealth of knowledge and heartfelt wisdom. Dr. Hilarie Cash, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I love having you here. Today with our conversation, I'm choosing to make it a little more structured. I love a good conversation, a good back and forth. However, you have so much knowledge and wisdom in this field that I feel is really taking parents by surprise. And I have started to lovingly call it the tech monster because that lives in my home, because it is overriding me. It is taking precedence over me with my children. And I'm like, how is this little teeny box, in my case, the phone or an iPad or a computer, how are these little digital boxes taking emotional precedence over me, who loves my children and is there to serve and support my children? What's happening? Talk to us about this.
You know, you raised
Takes
something.
a deep breath.
Yeah, really. I mean, it is astounding. I think there are a number of things that contribute to the power of these little boxes. Certainly, all the applications that our kids are using them for, especially when it comes to entertainment and socializing, all of those things are designed to be extremely engaging and to get kids hooked, which is, although hooked is not a scientific term, what's happening in the brain is real. All of these things are designed to release excessive amounts of dopamine, opiates, and other neurochemicals that our kids are getting high on. And And so they are absolutely drawn to these boxes. And the boxes not only are the applications, but the boxes are something they can carry around very easily with them. And so they are accessible all the time. And it is that accessibility which certainly is contributing to the problem, as well as the fact that everything on them is designed to, get our kids hooked. So those are at least two of the reasons.
I remember when I was pregnant, my oldest is 14. And when I was pregnant, there was a movement in technology for pregnancy that was all about making things easier. And you could put little monitors on to hear the baby's heartbeat. And then, the baby comes out and you can have the monitors became way more advanced. And then there was bottle proppers. And I was just like, like, wait a second here. We're missing the connection point. It's the breastfeeding part is looking at your baby and stroking their head, which is such a natural thing moms do. Well, you're actually growing gray matter and you're looking at the baby and it's the eye contact and it's the bonding that's happening. And I feel as though that's what's happened to us. It's been this slow creep of convenience that has just come into our world where it was like, oh yeah, that's easier. Why not do it? Oh yeah, that's easier. Why not do it? And now all of a sudden we're inundated with, it started with apps. My friend has an app company, and in the 90s, they were gangbusters because everybody had an app. And so it was this slow creep of simplification and ease of use and connection. And now we're in so far inside of it that it feels wildly disconnected. And we are so, I feel as though there's such a resistance to use this word, but we have addiction issues. And we are afraid to use that language with our children because, can I have a child at 2 years old who's addicted? And what is my role in creating that?
So you can have a child at 2 years old who's addicted because let me just take a moment to sort of explain how physiologically, very simplistically, how addiction happens. Because when the brain, we are all built to want to repeat pleasurable experiences because by nature we're designed to pursue things that are pleasurable to us. Food is good, so we pursue food. Other things are good and we pursue them. And we're designed by nature to do that. When we experience or anticipate experiencing something pleasurable, then it increases the release of dopamine and these other neurochemicals. But when the brain is experiencing too much of this release, it's happening too strongly, it's happening too frequently, the brain actually withdraws the receptors to pick up those neurochemicals. That's what
Okay,
we
I
call
want you to say that
tolerance.
again, because I think that is what you just said. I just had a light bulb moment go off.
Okay.
When we have too much of it, it withdraws.
It withdraws. So, the one neuron is pumping some neurochemicals into the gap between it and another neuron.
Right.
And but when it's overstimulated, there's too much of that release of those neurochemicals. The neurons withdraw the receptors that would pick up those neurochemicals. It withdraws them so that you're not picking them up anymore. So you're not having the experience of that pleasure. All right.
So that's why you need more to get a hit.
That's right. That's right. So that can happen really at any age. And so it can happen in babies. And so that's called tolerance. And then you need more in order to get the pleasurable high that you want. And if that pleasurable activity or chemical is taken away, when you've gotten too much of it and you've gotten used to too much of it, you go into withdrawal. And withdrawal is that period of time when you experience unhappiness and you experience irritability and you're mad and angry because you want it. And that's the period that we call withdrawal, when the brain is bringing back the neurochemical, I mean, not the neurochemicals, the parts of the neuron that can pick up those neurochemicals. All right. And once that has happened, and we call that upregulating to normal function, once that has occurred, then, you and I and everybody else are capable of experiencing just the normal highs and lows of a normal life.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I'm hearing what you're saying, and what I'm hearing is the neuroplasticity of the brain. The brain is very amendable, and we are able to change our patterns. We're not always in fixed patterns. We can change our patterns. Is that right?
Well, that is true, although that's not exactly what I was talking about. But yes, that also is true. And
Okay. So
yeah.
my question on that is, and what I hear you saying is this withdrawal. How is that? So if I watch a child have technology, and when it's time to turn off the technology, and usually leads with a parent saying, okay, you're not listening, the internet switch goes off, or you're not listening, unplugged, or you're not listening, it's out of your hands. Some action happens that breaks the child from it, which is usually not the child going, here you go.
Right.
And there's a meltdown. So
right.
that's an addictive response.
It is. An addictive. Well, it's the child not wanting to stop a pleasurable experience.
Okay.
And
that.
Yeah, it's the child not wanting to stop a pleasurable experience. And even if the child is not addicted, addiction is that change in the brain that I was trying to describe earlier. And that change may not have occurred yet, but nonetheless, a child wants to continue what is pleasurable. So with or without addiction, a child may throw a temper tantrum because you've withdrawn that thing that is excessively pleasurable to the child.
Okay, I have a question for you about that. But I want to ask you a question before that. When kids are into the pleasurable, and they are no longer able to be with the pleasurable, and that reaction is, from my understanding, it's an unmet need. And how do we communicate or understand this dynamic with our children in a way that creates healthy communication versus more toxic talk over the tech monster that lives in most people's homes? So I feel as though it creates explosive arguments. It creates friction in the family. It creates stress because parents know in their authentic core, I believe, or I feel deeply, and I'm speaking from experience, I know that it's being on technology is not the healthiest thing for my child. And they have convincing strategies like, it's how I play with my friends, it's how I socialize, I'm getting my dexterity is improving, my reaction time. They have these great stories. And yet there are other ways to play with friends, there are other ways to socialize, there are other ways to get your reaction time. And yet we keep buying our children's narrative or falling prey to let them do it, let them do it, let them do it. And I feel when I'm working with my children, are they not getting that they're replacing with technology?
Okay, so I mean, each individual family and kid is, you have to understand that family's story to really answer that question. But if we're going to talk just broadly, there are certain things kids need, and they're not always easy. Like kids need to, and it is in the nature of a child a young child to want to explore their world, to want to communicate with their caregivers and peers, to exercise, to test themselves, to be creative, play with their toys. All of these things are completely how they are built. It's natural to them. The trouble is that screens will override nature very often. And so let's say a kid is hungry or tired or needs to go pee, but, or there's somebody they love in the other room who's saying, come and play with me. But the screen holds them there. And the hold, the mesmerizing effect of that screen is so powerful that it overrides all the other, instincts. And it's easy, it's immediate, it's right there. It's just, there's no effort really involved. And whereas going out and learning how to walk on a balance beam and learn how to swing on a swing and all of these things that actually by nature kids do want to master, they're actually also, though, difficult. They require effort. Running around makes you tired. And so it's this ease of use for young children and the mesmerizing design of everything that will keep a child there. So the child's need is for everything that doesn't have to do with the screen. And the screen is simply replacing all those other activities that the child by nature needs to be doing. And certainly if a child is lonely, a child is in any sort of psychological pain, the screen is a wonderful distraction from that pain. But if you think about the most benign childhood, childhood is still full of challenges. Kids, it's not easy being a kid. And so the screen, which is just there and, just right there, is a way to avoid the normal challenges of child development. Like it's not easy to learn to walk. And so you won't learn to walk if you've got a screen there.
Yeah.
Like it's hard work learning to stand up and balance and walk.
Right.
And if you've got a screen in front of you, you're not going to stand up and face that challenge.
So are we seeing that clinically, that children are delayed in walking or delayed?
We absolutely are. We absolutely are. There's Chris Rowan is a wonderful pediatric occupational therapist.
We're speaking
And yeah, and she sees kids coming to kindergarten who cannot hold themselves upright on the edge of a chair because they have not developed the muscle capacity in their core to do so. And this is extraordinary.
I say astonishing. That's a new way of me interpreting this, that it's actually, I spoke with Dr. Andrew Doan, and he was saying that what's happening is there's a manufactured reality that's happening in the world of games, typically apps, games, things like that. Kids are racing cars, they're shooting guns, they're conquering, people, towns, whatever. And they get that dopamine hit of, I did that. I'm strong, I'm mighty. And they have the intelligence going into the brain of accomplishment, but they don't have the physical body activation of accomplishment. And he said there's a huge disconnect happening inside of the human body for children's development, and that they're getting I did that, but they're not having the physical proof of I did that. So it's actually causing a greater, I don't want to misquote him, but the way I interpret it was a greater uh, depression and negative ability, because they think they can do it, and the second they challenge that in the real world, they fail miserably, or they don't do it to the way their brain experienced them doing it in the video game. And so they have this break in understanding of who they are. And it's, kids are meant to go get dirt under their nails and skin their knees and fall and rough it up on the playground because boys wrestle, and they're meant to go be in the experience of each other, and they're meant to bump up against each other. And that's what I'm doing with this conversation on happy parent, happy child. It's how do we get back to bumping up against each other and being in healthy conversation and recreating, reestablishing the sacred family unit. And what you're saying is so interesting, because there is a delayed response. And what does that look like long term? I mean, we have Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation. We're getting the beginning data of kids that have grown up with technology. You're getting kids at your program. What does that look like with that delayed experience of self? Because so much has been intellectually experienced, but not physically experienced.
It has many complex ramifications that we see in our clients. So let's just take social skills. Let's start there.
That's a good one.
If you have, it takes actually being around people and interacting socially with them and getting the feedback that you get through those social interactions, that you hone your social skills. You learn, oh, that didn't go over well. I better not do that again. Oh, that went really well. I see that works, and you hone your skills through the experience of it. Online socializing doesn't teach that. It's just a different screen mediated. It might include the voice. It often won't even include the voice. And so you might have an easy time talking with and joking around with and flirting with people online. But when it comes to the physical experience of being in a room with someone else, you don't have those skills because they don't translate well from, the online world into the physical real world. So that would be an example that we see in our clients all the time. Our clients tend to be, in terms of social skills and communication skills, way behind. And also behind in confidence. They're socially anxious. And so that's a very negative loop of, I feel anxious, so I don't want to go out into the world where I can get the experience that will help me build skill and confidence.
So are you saying that anxious behavior, healing anxious behavior is by growing confidence with self?
The more you practice something, the better you get at it. And as you get better and better at something, you grow confidence with that, along with that.
And so that's really fascinating. I was talking to Allison Canavan, who's a supermodel, and she was talking about how anxious she was as a supermodel. And here she's getting, lots of evidence of her beauty. And yet, what is it inside people that they don't embody it? They don't embody that confidence. And that's a really big connection for me with anxious behavior. And the more you do it, the more confident you get, and putting those two side by side. I really love that, Hilarie. So let's play this out a little bit, because I know from my environment and what I saw, and really which was the impetus for all of this, is that, and I started with this, that there was just not normal to me things happening in my home, and I was not willing to normalize it. And a lot of it started with COVID, because kids were inside so much, and my kids didn't have games until COVID, video games.
And then that also was the onslaught of ed tech in my environment. I know a lot of schools were going to ed tech before that, but our school took it up full force. And I know a lot of schools did. There was a huge increase in educational technology. And I homeschool now, and a lot of my teachers that I've interviewed are from the public school. And the reason they're leaving is because they feel like glorified babysitters. They're no longer creating an impact. They're just sitting in the room and the kids on the computer. And it's a different environment. So I see with how this creep that I keep talking about comes in, and now there's justification. I need it for my homework. It's all around us. But let's play this out. How are we as parents who are so committed to our children and so in love with these lives when they come out of the womb and they're into life? It's like, oh my God, the whole world's for you. Everything's a possibility. And you're just, and we have this supreme experience with love, which is hormone also instigated, but it's also very primal and natural. And then the more time that happens between, hi, welcome to the world, and the older they get, the more we go into, less of anything's the possibility and more into, let me just get through today. And there's the pressures of all that's being asked of parents. There's no owner's manual or guidance tool. I've been looking online, there really aren't any support groups for families and tools and resources, which is what I'm seeking to create here. But if we do not really go face to face with what we're inside of right now, let's play that out. What are we looking at for our children and for their future? And like, are they kids living in our basements? Are we having to support them because they don't know how to go out and be in the world? Are they tech geniuses that can be like a Mr. Beast and make billions of dollars because they understand the digital world so well and how to market? What is that typical human experience that's being created?
Well, my frame of reference are the clients that we work with. So how typical are they? I mean, I think there are a lot of young adults who are like our clients, that we are seeing just a very tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the clients, of people who are just like our clients. And here are sort of typical, some typical characteristics of them. They are anxious and depressed. They have failed, usually in multiple realms. They have failed academically. Almost all of them, the young adults who come, have failed out of college. A few have made it through, but most have failed out. They have typically failed at work, if they have worked at all. They have failed at relationships, and their friendships that they had as kids have fallen away. They haven't maintained those because they've just gone online. They are in conflict with their families, and they are often they have not dated, or if they've dated, they have not been in relationships that are lasting. So they don't feel successful in relationships, and they often are very scared of relationships. Their identities are really built not around realistic goals of, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be this, that, or the other professional thing, a cabinet maker, whatever. Those aren't their goals. And but instead what they've done is put years of many hours a day into the goal of being an online influencer in the gaming world, being a pro gamer in some capacity. And, they're not going to make it, but they have invested their energy and their life force into those goals. And so, and when they kind of wake up out of that, by going through detox and being, going through our program, they often will just kind of shake their heads and say, I can't believe I wasted years of my life doing this. And they often are not healthy physically. They're underweight or overweight. They don't have interest in, even if as kids they might have once been interested in sports, often they don't have interest in physical activity. Their eating habits are very poor, vitamin D deprived, just a lot of physical problems often. And of course, sleep deprivation, sometimes for years and years. They have been getting inadequate sleep, and it's very hard for them to get on a regular sleep schedule, that works because their systems are so out of sync. So there really are these very serious consequences that are occurring. And I think one of the most pernicious consequences is kind of just a fear of the real world, a lack of confidence and a lack of skills. Think about, riding a bicycle or driving a car or taking a bus. Many of our clients haven't done any of those things. And when they were in their addiction and being, allowed to live in the home and not work, and and parents have sort of been taking care of them, they feel very dependent on that life of being taken care of, and they're ill prepared for the real world, and so the real world and being out in the real world and being resourceful and kind of confident and figuring it out, these things are very difficult for them. So that's very typical of our clients. And I think there's a broad swath of the young adult population that this describes.
I see that in my just purview of life and walking around. I say this, I created all of this to support families, because we cannot fix what we are inside of if we start with shaming or blaming, because then people get stuck into immediately defending and justifying, and that's not where the solution lands. So I have so much tenderness and awareness. I'm a single mom, working single mom. I know, I see the demands, the pressures of life. I was in a marriage. I saw that from a two-person perspective. And I know that our environment is very much, there's a lot that's put upon us, especially with the instant gratification society and the marketing towards the more you have, the better you are, and consumption. We've gone into this barrel roll of, I need this to be liked. I need this to feel happy. I need this. And it's all this outside pursuit. So in all of those pressures and all of that dumping on, I feel, and I have friends with children with special needs. And they just need a break. So I understand where the occurrence starts. I understand where, oh yeah, I watched TV as a kid, go watch your iPad. But it's not the same. I played video games as a kid, but we would play for 30 minutes and then we'd run outside again. And I see it so differently now. And so what's the conversation to have for parents to support them and get them into a place of empowerment versus shame or blame? Because we need to start arm in arm, hand in hand, heart in heart, making the choice. After this summit, we're doing a digital detox as part of a family reboot system. And it's really because I feel as though this is not something that's meant to be done alone. It is I'm going to tell a quick story before you tell me about family. But last night, my children were on technology beyond what their agreement was. And it's, I say to them, you did not you did not follow through with your agreement. Let's talk about that. And to me, it's, like asking an alcoholic to walk around with a glass of vodka all week and say, don't drink this till Friday. And so I have real awareness that, and I'm teaching them to self-monitor, self-regulate. My boys are 9, 12, and 14. And I said to them, do you guys notice how hard it is for you to stop when you're on it? And they have their stories and their justifications. And I've listened to these many times. And I said, well, when you ask me for sugar and we have a conversation about sugar, you're okay if it's no for sugar. So that shows me that you have a balanced relationship with sugar. If I ask you to not do this, we talk about it and I say, don't do this, and you go do it anyway, then it shows me you don't have a balanced relationship with technology. Does that make sense to you? And they said, they got it. They got the distinction right there. But that's where I feel as though it's a monster in the house, and parents are up against, I'm speaking from self here, they're up against such an onslaught, again, with ed tech and our friends and divorced home, where my 12-year-old has a phone from his dad because his dad wants to talk to him. When I've never limited communication, he's validated the need for our 12-year-old to have a phone. So there's so much happening. How can families, what is the offering for families to support them inside of this storm?
I mean, it is for sure the big question. And I guess I want to backtrack a little bit by answering it and saying, I truly believe that it is a societal problem that has to have a societal solution, and that the family is just one part of that. And so it's this heavy use of technology is a social norm, and I want to urge all of the parents who listen to this to think that, to recognize that there needs to be pressure at multiple levels of society in order to find really good, broad solutions to all of this that will impact kids. But for the part that relates to parents and what parents can do, first of all, it's very important that parents look at their own use, their own tech use, and make sure they're modeling what they want for their own kids. And then starting as soon as possible with clear rules around tech use, and using sort of natural consequences when that doesn't happen, but also engaging the kids just, stage by stage as the kids are growing up in conversation, so the kids have some ownership in what those rules are going to be. Parents can have some bottom lines that can't be crossed, but there also can be room for negotiation with kids as they get older and older, and want to be able to use the tech. And those conversations, it's always going to be easier if all of this starts at a young age. It's best if kids don't have any access to screens before the age of 2. Best if they have very limited access to screens, through the elementary years, because what kids really has nothing to do with screens. And yet they may have access to screens because of the schools or the families, and that's okay as long as it's within bounds. And then when my own approach and my son is, older, he's 35, and so I didn't have to face this quite as such a difficult situation as parents now have to face. But I am a great believer in the philosophy and explaining to kids how big a responsibility having technology is, because it's so powerful, and it is going to be up to them to demonstrate enough maturity to handle what they're being allowed. And if they demonstrate that they can't handle it because, they throw fits when it's time to stop, that all that means is that they just aren't quite mature enough for it. And so it's going to have to go away. And it's just going to have to go away for a while and let them grow up a little bit more until they, and then we can try it again and see if they have the capacity to, follow the agreed upon rules.
Okay, so I'm going to meet you with what you said with some reality in what the world looks like for a single mom who's working and needs to get the work done to pay the bills and feed the children and provide for the children and all of this. And I see this in my single mom world. I know that there is a lot of pressures inside a two family income as well, but I don't have a partner that I can say, can you go help the kids or go play ball or go throw the blah, blah, blah. So what is the reality? What is that offering for families? Because kids are very smart. And what I've noticed with my children, the good news with my children is that I have been in this space for a very long time. And so I am equipping them with tools and I hold space for their conversation, but I also ask that I'm respected as well. That's why we're having conversations about healthy communication on here, to understand how to hear each person's side in a way that respects each other. That's another part of this component, Hilarie, is really how do we communicate? Because technology conversations are typically, I watch them typically be blow up conversations that causes a greater divide in the fabric of family. So a single parent who's working, who needs their phone, who needs their computer to advance their business, advance the needs of the family, and the child is saying, well, you're on it, why can't I be on it? Or the child is seeing, as you're saying, watch, the child is seeing that I'm on it, so I'm modeling to them high-tech usage. However, the difference is, which is what I do say to my kids, but I don't know that I'm right or wrong, I am advancing my life. I am building a process here. And I would support you using technology to build a process. They're very much fans of watching people play games. And I said, it's not allowed in our house. You do not watch other people advance their lives. You go advance your life. You go build your life. But what do you say to that? Because the pressure of a parent is very real right now. We are financially strapped as a society on the whole. We need to we're working home more now because of COVID and all that changed in the work dynamics. So what's your solution to that, to support parents that are like, but I need this, and I also need them to be busy, and I can't go spoon feed them their entertainment?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's valid to draw the distinction between using a computer for work and using the computer for entertainment. Personal, pleasurable acts, processes. And, you are using your computer, however small that computer might be, you are using your computer for your work. And I think that's valid. We live in the digital era and we use computers for work and school. And if your kids are going to a school that require them to do homework online or whatever, they have to do that. That is very different from using it so they're not bored, using it for socializing, using it for personal, pleasurable things. And so I think that's the conversation that you have with your kids. Now, you're saying, and it raises a very fair question, how do I help my kid? What do I do with my kids when we're all at home? I have to get work done and they're making noise, they're being busy. It really helps me get my work done if they are busy and quiet on screens. And sometimes there's nothing for it but to allow that to happen. However, to the degree that it's possible, kids really need to learn how to do something that's not screen related for socializing, being creative, entertainment, all of that.
Yeah,
So in your family, I don't know how that would work.
Well, I'm speaking also for all the moms out there and the single
Yeah.
parents and the working parents, because it's gotten to a point though, Hilarie, where if I hear my kids being excessively quiet, I know they're on technology.
Right.
And that to me is actually kind of an upsetting sound. They know that when I'm recording, and they know that, there's guidelines around working from home that they have learned to honor and participate in. It's, yes, I understand that. What do you think about structure for children? I find that the more I provide structure in their world, the more they are able to pivot off of technology. If I
Yes.
say you have to have the dishwasher loaded, unloaded, the floor vacuumed, I assign roles to each child, their beds have to be made, they each have to do their own laundry. If I'm assigning roles and responsibilities, which is back to what you're saying about getting them life experience,
Yeah.
and I've placed structure around their day and working with the teacher and getting their, the more they are not using, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm bored. Oh, I'll pick this up. There it is. Because kids just don't know how to be bored anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think you've answered your own question very well, that structure is really helpful for kids.
Do you use structure in your programs?
Oh, yes, very much so. There's a wake up time, there's a go to bed time, and in between every day of the week has a structure to it. Absolutely. And many of our clients comment that that is one of the most helpful elements in the whole experience.
So when you're getting these cases of people that, what is the thing that says, I can't do this anymore. I need a program. What's that typical switch? Is it the parent saying, I can't do this anymore? Or is it the child saying, I don't want to live anymore? What happens that people say, I need a program?
It happens both ways, but it's more often that it's the parents who say, I'm not going to do this anymore. That is more often the way. And often it happens because when we had our adolescent program, which we don't run anymore since COVID, but when we ran it, what happened? The parents that said, I'm not going to do this anymore, the kids were refusing to go to school. They were fighting, often extremely violently, with the parents, both verbally and physically. And the parents just didn't know what to do in that situation, so they sent them for treatment. With the adult population, it is young adults who have most typically failed out of college, and parents have, wasted money, hard earned, difficult to supply money, and they don't want to keep doing that on the promise. Very typically the client will fail out of school and then say, okay, let me live at home and I'll work. And then they don't work, or they work and then they fail out of work.
Well,
So,
that just sounds like normal addiction behavior.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. I feel, am I in the right framework of seeing that this is a way bigger problem than people are speaking to?
Well, the answer is from my perspective, I do think that there is mild addiction happening for a huge percentage, the majority of the American population, and that people are addicted, if nothing else, to their phones. And and they're addicted to various things, whether it's social media or, video games or just searching for information. And we all tend to freak out if we've
That was very grandmother of you, Hillary. Porn is another addiction.
and so, but the thing that really is going to determine the difference between kind of a mild addiction is functionality. Can you still function? And if you can still function, you're mildly addicted to your phone or whatever, okay, I guess society will go forward. But when you cannot function anymore, that's when, you really need to get help somehow. And I do think that that is happening more and more. We're seeing more and more girls graduating from high school, going to college, graduating from college, and they are surpassing males. It doesn't mean that girls aren't addicted to social media and other things online, but they seem to be remaining functional and capable of setting enough boundaries around that they are able to move forward with their lives. We treat mostly males at Restart, and those males have become extremely dysfunctional. So I think it's a big problem, and it's, for most people, it's on the milder side, but I think it is a huge problem.
Well, when you're in the process of understanding how to parent and you're here to equip your children with life skills, how to be in the world in a dynamic way that you are a happy, healthy, functioning adult. So we're focused on the education, the nutrition, the behaviors to help them function, like hygiene. You're focused on these things, and then all of a sudden in comes this monster that is hijacking the process, and you have to now not only communicate with your child, but you have to communicate with this addiction that is consuming your child. And I will definitely say that I have addiction in my home on a mild level. My kids are one-dimensional. They don't know how to say, I'm bored. What fun thing can I go do? I must have 60 outdoor toys and things to do, and we have laser tag. But if I'm not instigating it, they are very much like with their finger in their nose looking, like they don't have any self-witness. And so that's why I pulled them out of school, because I felt as though that they didn't know how to write. They didn't know how to, and I thought, this is crazy. They're typing everything. Their handwriting is abominable. I need to serve my children in a way that builds them into humanhood and being functioning adults. So, and there aren't programs. You said the adolescent program is no longer in existence. There's a bunch of programs online for parents to get their kids off screens, which is another weight on parents. So I have so much compassion for this experience that we're all in. And I feel like as I said in my pitch for Happy Parent, Happy Child, is that, we're guards. We're constantly on our kids to stop versus connecting with our kids and having that relationship that the home environment is meant to support, because we have to deal with this thing that our kids, it's their default. So, what do we do when do we create communities that are about, what is the answer to support families in reducing the one dimensionality that's coming out of our children? When you were bored as a kid, you'd go pick flowers and make a bouquet. I mean, it was innocuous. It wasn't a big deal, but we just played with rocks and called them people. It wasn't, but we did it. And it was all building the brain.
That's right. I mean, you're raising, the right questions, and what are the answers? Again, back to, I think, all parts of society have a part in this. Yes, families have a part, parents have a part, but so do the schools, You know, our representatives in Congress should be passing legislation that holds the tech companies accountable in ways that they are not held accountable at all for creating the kind of technology which will get our kids addicted and then make all of this much more difficult for us as parents. You know, if the technology that our kids were using was not addictively designed, it would be far easier for you, the parent, to just say, okay, you know, time's up. You've reached your limit, kids, put it away. And it would be much easier to put it away, right? But it's designed to hook them so that it's hard for them to put it away, and they'll fight you so that they don't have to put it away. And so I want to urge parents to, you know, think in the big picture and support things like the Kids Online Safety Act and any legislation which is designed to hold the tech companies who design all this accountable, to design it in ways that are kid safe and kid friendly and are not exploiting kids through marketing and all of the things that they're currently doing. So that's one level. I think that schools are a place that it's the one place still in society that can bring parents from all walks of life together at a school. And getting involved in the PTSA at a school and seeking out experts who can come and teach about healthy tech use and advocating for healthy tech use. You know, let's get screens out of schools. Let's not allow kids to bring smartphones to school. Let's stop teaching online. Let the teachers teach. And once again, let's go back to school books. You know, there is a movement for that. Parents can join that movement and demand that schools make changes and get together with one another. The more parents can find one another like-mindedly and create their own communities of like-minded parents who will honor one another's, you know, rules around tech use and that kind of thing. I mean, that would be just an enormous help. As you may know, and I'm sure you do know, that many of in Silicon Valley, for example, tech executives often send their kids to non-tech using schools, and they don't allow their kids on tech at home. But they are the very people designing the addictive technology.
Yes.
And so, you know, think about the irony and cynicism of that. But their kids don't suffer because they're part of a community where all the other kids aren't using tech, you know, and so they feel it's the social norm to not be using tech all the time. So the more and that's why I applaud the work you're doing, because you're trying to help parents find a way to do, I think, exactly that. Find other parents that they can be in community with and agree on what the rules are going to be when their kids are playing. I mean, the more they can do that, the easier it will be for them to parent and stick to rules that are sensible and, you know, with their kids.
Yeah. So, and there are no programs currently for adolescent addiction to go to.
The only thing that is available right now, as far as I'm aware, are going to be wilderness programs.
Mm.
And some wilderness programs are excellent. They'll, you know, I thoroughly approve of those good programs, and they will detox a kid and give a kid lots of new experiences, get them excited about life without technology. All right, that will happen in a wilderness program. Probably, hopefully. But meanwhile, the parent is going to have to work at figuring out how they want to, improve the family dynamics, what the rules around tech are going to have to be, that kind of thing.
Well,
So, yeah.
yeah, and I think when you and I had a little chit chat before, one of the things we talked about when you have kids that go home, that's really important is that the parents look at their own tech use. And so
Yeah.
yes, if I'm using it for work, that's one thing. But are they also seeing me doing the endless scroll? And
Right.
they also doing me this? And maybe that is for some way work, but also parents have to have the courage to have self-witness and to self-monitor and to
Right.
change their behavior to support their child.
Right.
I want to leave this on a happy note though, because this has been a lot of reality hitting us in the face and calling upon the courage of parents. Really, this is no joke what's happening in homes. Let's talk about, as you said with wilderness, get them off the addiction. Let's talk about that this is all doable. We can find our way to the other side. And what do you have to say about that? That we can get our kids back. We can give them a childhood. They can find their way into playing outside. We are not jumping off a cliff here with no return.
Right. So there are a few I want to point out about how to achieve that. And one is for parents not to try to do it in isolation. Finding one another, finding a parent group like this is, I think, critical to success. Someplace where you can feel like you've got support and you've got the understanding of other parents. You can reach out to other parents for good ideas about how to handle a difficult situation, all of that. So I think communities of parents, finding those communities is really important. And, I don't know what's available for each of the parents who might see this, but I think that's critical, is that you find at least a few other parents that you can feel supported by in this process. So if you can do that, and if you can also really figure out how to have a good time with your kid and have meaningful conversations, however awkwardly they might begin, I think that is going to be something which will strengthen the parent-child relationship. And the stronger that relationship is, the more the child will handle well the rules that the parent is setting, which are to the benefit of the child, whether or not the child likes it. But, having rules without any solid relationship doesn't really work very well. So just really finding ways to build the relationship and make sure that you're really tuning into your kid and finding out what makes your kid tick and exploring the world together. All of these are going to be things that will make all of this easier. And then finally, if you can get away, or at least have the kids get away, but if everybody in the family could get away from tech and just go through a kind of a tech detox for a weekend, a week on vacation, it allows for a reset, a reboot that really might make all of this just easier to accomplish.
So I think I appreciate that a lot. I love that you, who's had so much time in this space, is sharing all that. That's exactly what I'm seeking to create here, is a community for families to do this together and to really be a support structure community. So important community, and that we're not here to shame or blame. We're here to get through this and support parents and getting through this for having family again and being in the experience of each other. There's a question that when you take away the technology, does a substitute need to be given? And I don't know I really enjoy the opportunity for my children to be in question, to be in curiosity of how am I going to entertain myself. But what do you say to that?
I think what is important is to make stuff available to them. If you're going to take tech away, make sure there are books in the house, things to be creative with, opportunities to play with the neighbor kids or their friends. You know, it's not that the parent has to do everything, but creating opportunity for the kids to go find other things to do is important.
Right. Well, I've seen a big reduction in that with my son since he's fallen in love with basketball and
Yeah.
he's got sports in his life. And so I can say to him, are you proud of your tech usage today? And he's 14 though, and we can have a more dynamic conversation. He said, Mom, I really think I need to use less of it and I'm going to pick up the piano. Is that okay? Like, let's go for it. It's a big instrument. Can we start with a, keyboard?
Yeah, that's fabulous.
But
That's
that's, a lot of healthy communication, and he's monitored for sure. But he has, as a parent, you let out a little bit of rope, and how much do they handle it? And a little bit more. And then if they don't, you pull it back a little bit. So right now his rope's gotten a little longer, and we're in that conversation of how long should your rope be?
And I would like to just mention to parents that kids should not have tech of any sort in their bedrooms. And that it is so important for the development of those good conversations and those good relationships to have sacred places and times when tech is not allowed at the table, over dinner, or you have to figure it out as a family, but it's so important to have those times and places where there just is not going to be any tech.
I love that. My kids have started to go into their rooms, and I say, you can't, because I won't be a house where we all go hide in our individual holes.
Right.
We need to be in the experience of each other. But yeah, that's just really good. I love that a lot. Thank you for adding that.
And another couple of suggestions. One is it can be a really fun exercise to sit down with kids and with you can do things to make this even more creative and fun, but at the very least, just create a list of 100 or more things that you can do as a family or individually when you are bored, or stressed. And you want to turn to tech, and you just have a long list, and you can put the list up on the refrigerator or someplace, and the kids can go there, and you are working and they're bugging you and they're bored, and you say, go look at the list, go choose something from that list. And then also I want to just remind parents that a lot of parents want their kids to have phones because they want to be able to stay in contact with them. But you can get phones that don't have internet access. And those phones can look just like a regular smartphone if your kid is embarrassed, and wants to have a phone that looks like everybody else's phone. We at Restart, when our clients go from the intensive portion of the program to the transition program, they have a GAB phone, GABB, and that GAB phone, it can text, it can call. You can actually, as a parent, download onto it what you want. Like you might want the map, or you might want a music app, but that's it. Everything else, it's from that moment on, when you say so, we're done. It doesn't have internet access. And, that can be really useful.
Is there other technology to monitor? I know the iPhone can monitor how much time kids have on apps and what they're able to see. But kids are smart and they're finding workarounds. I just learned from
Yes.
Google Documents, for Chromebooks, kids are passing illegal or inappropriate things through Google Docs because Google Docs is not monitored, and Google Docs is part of the app suite on Chromebooks. So now kids are doing that workaround.
Correct.
And so is there something that parents, is there a technology that supports parents on having, a guard, some sort of digital guard on all of this? Is it, I know
I don't know.
Circle does it a little, but it doesn't do it outside of the home.
Uh-huh. There is technology. I don't know what, in fact, when our clients are in the transition program, they move from a gab phone to back to their smartphones at a certain point when their recovery is stronger. But they agree to let us monitor their phone use. But I don't know what the software is that we're using. And so I think parents will just have to do some research on what is available currently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you could share that with us, I can share it with our audience as we grow in our
Okay.
understanding of how to do this and support each other. Uh, it's definitely a conversation. I appreciate the time you've given. We're not done. There's more to do, but you are just such a presence and support in this surprise addiction that I feel most households are facing. So I'm so grateful for your input and your time and your wisdom and your tenderness. Thank you so much, Hilarie.
You're so welcome, and thank you for what you're
And
doing.
thank you so much. Enjoy did you say you're off to, is it Monaco?
Morocco,
Morocco. You're off
yes.
to Morocco to carry this conversation over there. So
Yeah,
you have a big impact. So thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll be in touch, and I'll definitely reach out regarding our family reboot challenge that we're doing and getting parent support and getting their kids off so much tech time and into the
Okay.
real world. All right.
Yeah, all
Thank
right.
you. Many blessings.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wasn't that great? I mean, she's just so gentle. And that's what this community is all about. It's about building a community that is no shame, no blame. It's about really coming back into ownership with your family, and that we love our children. We would do anything for our children. And it's for us to really remember the value of our position with our children and to own that. And what do we need to do to support them in this tech addicted world that they live in? So that's why we have the VIP program. You get all these conversations after the 24-hour free period. You get all these conversations at your leisure. But there's also so much more to it. It's more than the conversations. It's the conversation that we're going to have. It's the conversation to support you in what needs to happen inside of every little family. And together, the more we have these conversations in families, we will rise together. I'm so glad you're here. I am just grateful to be doing this and to just super part of service for me. It's so important. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next conversation.